In this tutorial, we're going to look at setting up a basic scene in Harmony Essentials, as well as exploring some of the basic tools used for creating an object. So first of all, let's give our new scene a name. It's also worthwhile making sure you save your project in a particular location. You're best off having a set project folder where you can save all of your scenes to. So, under camera size, I'm going to choose HD TV 1080p 24. This basically means it's standard 1080 HD at 24 frames per second. So the width is 1920 pixels and the height is 1080 pixels, which is high definition standard HD, which you'll get on most domestic television sets. Now the frame rate, I'm choosing 24 frames per second. Now we normally recommend for video using 25 frames per second, but for animation I personally find it easier working with 24 frames per second, and that's because if you want to divide 24, you've got a few more variables, so half a second is going to be 12 frames, a quarter of a second is 6 frames, and so forth. So I'm going to click Create Scene to create my new scene. So you'll be greeted with the basic workspace of Harmony Essentials. So to explain about the workspace itself, you basically have both toolbars and tabs which you can work with. So toolbars include things like the selection tool, the contour editor, the paintbrush tool, and so forth, as well as things like open documents, save documents, and so forth. You can move toolbars, it's very flexible. So if I wanted my tools to be over here, I can move them over there. Let's just put them back where they were. You can also right click in any space around here and choose additional tools to either hide by unticking something or show by ticking the option again. So the toolbars are very customizable. So during this tutorial, if you ever find you can't find a particular tool, just make sure the toolbar's ticked and have a little look around your workspace because you may have moved it. You also have tabs, which are quite handy. So at the moment we're in camera view in this screen. We can also switch to drawing view, which is slightly easier for sketching out your characters in. We have various tabs along here, such as the library where you can save various resources. You have the color tab, and again, these can all be moved around, so you can arrange these into any order you want. I'm going to move the color tab back down there. There we go. You can also add new tabs. So if you find you can't see a tab, you can click the little plus icon and choose which tab you want to show, or you can close tabs using the X button. And again, tabs are very flexible, so if you can't find a particular tab I'm referring to, you can add it anywhere you like, or you can close the tab if you don't want to see that anymore. So let's move on to creating an object and describing some of the different ways we can create an object in Harmony Essentials. So starting with a comparison between the brush tool and the pencil tool, if I were to draw a line using the brush tool over here, you can change using the tool properties things like the maximum size, the smoothing. So for example, if I have no smoothing and draw a circle, you can see it's quite rough. If I turn smoothing right up and draw a circle, it kind of neatens out for me. If I zoom in using 2 on the keyboard, you can see that circle is a little bit more rough than this circle here. It uses its AI to try and draw what it thinks is a more neat version of what you're attempting to do. You can also choose various presets for which brush style you like. So again, if I zoom in slightly, you can see the difference in brush stroke style. Now the pencil tool, you have a few similar options with size and smoothing, but the main thing to note, if I just draw a pencil line next to this paintbrush tool here, if I go to the contour selection tool, if I click on my brush stroke over here, I zoom right in, what you can see, my brush stroke is effectively made up of different points and it's kind of filled the center. Whereas the pencil tool, it's literally a single stroke. It's not a filled in stroke, it's a single black stroke. So you can then change the shape of this object like so. Whereas the brush tool, if I go back to that again, you can literally change the thickness any way you want with the brush tool. You can do this in any shape of object as well. it's up to you which object. So it's up to you which tool you prefer to draw in. Some people prefer to use the pencil tool because of the fact you've got more fine control over where these points are. Some people like to use the brush tool because you can manually change the width wherever you want along that particular stroke. So it's up to you as to which tool works best for you. Now to select an object, using the select tool, you can either click once and then move it around. I'm just going to undo that. Alternatively, you can draw a shape around the area you want to select. So rather than it being a traditional box-shaped marquee tool, such as in Photoshop, you can actually draw the area you want to select. So if you want to get to an object that's kind of quite tricky to reach, it's quite easy to reach objects like so, and avoid selecting objects you don't want to select. Now let's look at colouring an object. So if we go with this object over here, if I select that object using the select tool, I can choose a colour for the stroke itself. I can use the paint tool to choose a fill colour and then click anywhere inside the object and it will fill that object. Now what you'll notice, if I try and fill this object which isn't closed, nothing will happen. I'm clicking and nothing's happening. With the tool properties for the paint option, you do have the option to close gaps. So if I change no close gap to close large gap, in theory, I can fill that with paint. So you can choose to ignore gaps in object. And that's quite handy. If you've got a very roughly drawn object which you want to fill, you can use the close gap option on your paint tool to close that.